In today's lesson, you will be learning about variables and expressions. Variables are one of the most important things in algebra. Yes, I said it, algebra. That's what you are going to be learning about now. And variables are a very big part of algebra. So let's go ahead and talk about what is a variable. Okay, you may have heard of this already and you may have some good experience with them already. Okay, variables are letters or symbols that represent an unknown quantity. An unknown quantity. Sometimes you can call them a nickname, okay? They often represent something that you don't know in a problem, okay? So if you see right here, it says a variable is a nickname for an unknown number in math. So, like for example, you have this little princess here. Her name is really long and complicated. Princess Qualitifia Bonsuato Versi. But you can just call me Q because that name is really long. So she has a nickname. Okay, so let's look at a couple things that we need to talk about down here. Let me move this around. When you see a problem like this, 3 times m, m is your variable, okay? And we want to say 3 times m. When we're talking about algebra, we can write this in many different ways. And you've probably started to see this already when you have been working on different word problems. I try to use lots of different ways to write multiplication just so you start to get used to it. So let's see the ways that we could write this and see if you've seen them before yourself. Okay, let me just zoom in a little bit in here so we have some more space. So 3 times m. I could write 3x using our x sign m. That's one way. I can also do 3 dot. Okay, we can use the little dot m. I can use 3 and parentheses. If you have a number next to a set of parentheses, like they're knocking on the door, think about the distributive property again, how we talked about that. That means it's multiplication. Okay? You don't just squish the numbers together and make a bigger number. It actually means 3 times m. What are some other ways that we could do it? We could write, let's see, you could just write 3m like that with the 3 next to the m. That's another way to do it. And those are the main ways to do it. But the one thing I wanted to make sure that you know is in algebra, we most often do not use this one, the 3 times m. And the reason that we don't is this x can oftentimes be confused for another variable because it is a letter. So I do not recommend using this when we are writing expressions once we get into algebra. It was fine before when we were doing basic math, but now that we're getting into algebra, I would really like you to stay away from this and to use any of the other options. Preferably this option here, just 3 times the letter or variable, or this one using parentheses. Those are the best ones to use, I think. So let's write a little note to ourselves right over here. Let's just say here, don't use. Because it gets confusing, trust me. So now let's look at division. What if we have 3 divided by m? What are some ways that we can write 3 divided by n? Okay, divided by, we have lots of different ways that we can write it. We can use the division sign, like 3 divided by m. That's one way to use it. We can use slash, 3 slash m like that, like a backslash. Hopefully you remember that fractions are just division problems in disguise, so we can certainly write it as a fraction, 3 divided by m, and I'm going to write a little note. This is the most common in algebra, the most common way to write it. That's why it was so important to understand fractions and why we've spent so much time on them this year. Okay, it's because they are a very big part of algebra and they are really just division problems. So that's one way we can do it. You can use the house too, but we don't really use that in algebra. Okay, that you could do that, but it's not typically used in algebra equations. So I want to show it just so you know, but you don't see that very often at all. This is sort of your preferred method. Let's put a little star by that. Okay, and I'm going to put a little star over here too by that one, just so that we remember that's the most preferred method for multiplication. I also just realized I thought of one more multiplication one that you might see on certain tests. It's the little star, like the little asterisk. You sometimes see that. And people often ask me, what is that little star? What does that mean? That also means multiplication. Okay, so hopefully that gives you a little bit of an understanding of what variables are, how they might look to you in different expressions and equations. And the other thing I wanted to tell you is that you can use anything as a variable. It doesn't have to be a letter. It doesn't have to be a symbol. It can be anything you want it to be. For example, you could write your own initial as a variable. You could use a smiley face as a variable. It really doesn't matter. It's just something that replaces an unknown quantity that you don't know. The one thing I usually tell my students is to try to stay away from using x as your variable all the time because we get it confused with the multiplication sign. We also try to stay away from the letter T because T looks like a plus sign a lot of times. So we try to stay away from those too. But otherwise, anything's okay. Go ahead and go to your next page, using variables and writing expressions and equations. One of the things that you're going to be doing in this lesson is taking word problems and turning them into algebraic expressions. So one of my favorite things to do, it's kind of like solving a puzzle. And that's one of the ways that you become a really good problem solver, is if you can take a word problem and turn it into an algebraic equation. It really helps you to solve problems. So let's talk about all the different words that we know that can mean addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, because that's one of the most important skills to have, is to know what math operation you should do when you look at a word problem. So for addition, some of the words that I think of are sum, okay, more than. However, some of you are probably thinking right now, when I see more than, I think of subtraction. And yes, oftentimes you will see a problem, and if it says how much more than, it actually means subtraction. So I usually think that that means subtraction more than addition. So I'm going to actually take it off of my addition list because I don't want to confuse you. Increased by, that would be another one that would mean addition. In all. Okay. How about total? Altogether. Those are all things that make me think of addition. For subtraction, I also think difference is a big word that means subtraction. Less than. Decreased by. All of those can mean subtraction. There are probably others as well, but those are some of the common ones. For multiplication, some words that mean to multiply, a big one is of. When you see the word of, that means to multiply. Product, multiplied by. Twice, like twice means 2 times by 2. So I'm going to write 2 times. Triple or tripled, that means to times by 3. Those are important words to know. For division, oftentimes you'll see the word each, like how much does each item cost? That usually means to divide. The word divide is often used in problems that mean division. Share, when they say how much would each person share, or what was somebody's share, that would mean that. Quotient. Per, like how many, or how much per item. When you see a problem like that, that usually means to divide. Separate, like if you want to find out how much each person will pay separately, that means to divide. Those are all words that mean division. Okay, hopefully that will help you to solve or to write math problems. Oops, I don't mean to make that So small. Let's move that right there. Okay. And now let's go ahead and go to the last page and do a little bit of practice in writing some of these expressions. Okay, so let's try it out. I want you to look at this and I want you to pause the video and try these on your own and then come back and see how correct you are. The first thing that you will do is read the problems. Like the first one says 15 increased by t. Use the words and operations list that we just created and see if you can write this out as an expression. Okay? And then come back to the video. Welcome back. The first one says 15 increased by t. Now what I like to tell people is when you write a word problem, start with the very first word or number that you see and just write it exactly as it sounds. So this says 15 increased by t. So start with the 15, okay, increased by, okay, that's one of our key words that means addition. So we say 15 plus, okay, now here's an example of why I wouldn't use t if I didn't have to, because look how close it's going to look to the plus sign. But in this case, we did. Okay, you can also write 15 plus, like, let's do smiley face, if smiley face was my variable, okay? That is what 15 increased by a variable, an unknown quantity, looks like. The next one says 3 feet less than the length. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and underline less than, because that's my key word. And then it says 3 feet less than the length. Okay, so that means that the length, let's call that L, okay? L minus 3. Okay, so the length minus 3 is going to be what we don't know, okay? Okay, let's go ahead and go to your next one. The product of r and 8. Okay, the product means to multiply, and the product of, this one's easy. So r times 8. You could write it just like this, r times 8, or you could write 8r, okay, or you could write 8 times r with parentheses. All of those would mean the same thing. Now the next one, the quotient of a number and 12. What we're looking for is the quotient. Okay, that's the answer that we're looking for. A number, I'm going to circle that because that's our variable. Okay, we don't know what that is, so we want the quotient of a number and 12. That means a number divided by 12. So we would write n, that's our variable, divided by 12. That's what we're looking for. Okay. Let's make a few of our own. Okay. So let's go ahead and say, how about, let's write the difference here. The other thing I want to point out right here, these examples over here are all examples of expressions, okay? And I'll tell you why. So these are expressions. Okay? They do not have an equal sign. No equal sign. Okay? Down here, I'm going to write a couple of equations. Okay, so I'm going to write 7 more than a number is 15. Okay? Is means equals. Okay? That's important, really important. And that means that they are equations. So I'm going to write another little note here. These are equations. Equations have equal signs. Okay, think of the word equa right there. So they have equal signs. They are sentences, whereas expressions are phrases. Okay, and I'm going to write that up here just so you know that. Expressions are phrases. If you were thinking about language arts here, they are like a phrase, a fragment. It's not a sentence. Equations have equal signs and they are sentences. So let's look at this one. 7 more than a number is 15. Now here's an example of where, remember when I told you that more than could mean addition or subtraction? This is one of those cases. This is where more than would equal addition. 7 more than a number is 15. So let's write that down. Let's start with 7. 7 more than a number, that's our variable. I'm going to circle it because that helps me know that it's a variable. So 7 plus n equals, because is our equals, 15. That's our equation. Okay, let's look at this one. How about this? 5 times the number of students is 250. Okay, let's go ahead and circle what is our variable or what we don't know. That would mean the number of students, okay, that's our unknown. Okay, and then it says 5 times the number of students is 250. So write it just like it sounds. 5 times, let's call that S for students. 5S is means equal 250. And that's as simple as that. At this point, you're not trying to solve these equations. You can't solve expressions because they don't have an equal sign. You're just writing them. You're just practicing taking words and turning them into expressions. I encourage you from now on to do that with any of your extended response problems. Turn them into algebraic expressions. Every single word problem really is an algebra problem. Let's go ahead and add a page, and then I will help you write a few more examples. Okay, let's do, how about this? 6 less than a number is 20. So I'm just going to write examples here. Okay, 6 less than a number is 20. Okay, what I want you to get in the habit of first is circle your variable. So in this case, what do we not know? We don't know this mystery number right here. Okay, then go ahead and underline some of the parts that you know, the number parts, okay, or the operations. It says 6 less than a number is 20. This is our equal, okay, so you can put that in to help you. Okay, so now let's just take it and write it out. 6 less than a number. Now this is tricky because some people want to write the 6 first, okay? But it says less than a number. Let's go ahead and put the equals 20 in because we know that. But this part is one of the most complicated expressions to write, actually. People might think it looks easy, but actually most people will write it backwards when they first start trying this. This says 6 less than a number, so we have to make a number first. So n minus 6 equals 20. I always encourage you, once you write your equation or expression down, to read it back to yourself and see if it matches the words. This says n minus 6 equals 20. Is that 6 less than a number is 20? Absolutely. Okay, let's do another one. 3 times Jack's age equals 12. Okay, in this case, they gave you equals instead of using is, so that's your equal right there. Okay, I'm actually going to erase that circle because I don't want to confuse you. I said to use the circle for variables, so we'll take that out there. Okay, what is our variable? Our variable in this case, what do we not know? It says 3 times Jack's age. What we don't know is Jack's age. Okay, so let's call that our variable. Let's call it J for Jack. It says 3 times Jack's age equals 12. So we know this last part is equals 12. That's easy. Then we take Jack and times it by 3. So 3J equals 12. That's your equation. Okay. Hopefully you feel pretty good about writing expressions and equations. You will do lots of practice on this, and because it's very important and it will help you in all of your other algebra and being able to solve equations. Please, if you have any questions, stop and ask your teachers for help, and please make sure that you answer the note check after the video. Bye for now.